All right, so we are going to try to take that map we made from last time. Hello, sorry, welcome back. We're going to try to take that map we made last time in Incarnate, and we are going to try to build that out in Roll20. So once again, if you are playing in this campaign, obviously spoiler alert, there's going to be some spoilers going on, so don't watch, or do, and just pretend like your character can't see it. Alright, let's get into it. So before I start combat, I'd like to give my characters a visual of what it will look like from a wide angle. This gives context. We do this a lot in photography where you can't take a shot of a close-up feature. You have to take a shot of a wider feature and then go into the close feature. So again, I would set the scene up with my group. Hey, this is the scene. This is the southeast plains. You can see the jungle far off in the distance. You can see the mountain range, and it gives a few hints in here like some rain and just kind of the desolate, or it's not the right word for it, but just like the complete uninhabited, unpopulated area for this region here. So what's it look like to build a map? Well, I've got a couple different assets that we built last time in the Incarnate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a page, and I need to look up the dimensions that we did. I think it was 40 by 60. So I'm going to just start off with that. I'm going to rename this as the Southeast Plains. Sometimes instead of that, I'll just do what I'm going to use it for, like trial of initiative. The problem with that is I already have a trial of initiative right here. So we'll see if it lets me save that. I like to have line movement block movement at all times, just because it's better. And this sometimes has caught me off guard, where like every time you load this page, it'll play some music, and then I get confused as to why it happens, and I forget that I set it up here. So other than that, I pretty much use default settings on these pages. Later on, we'll go into dynamic lighting, but for now, we're just going to save those settings here. And we're going to rechange this one to let's just do scene, so we can distinguish our two maps from each other. So we go into the trial of initiative map page. We see that we've set it up wrong. I've set it up vertically, and I meant for it to be horizontal. So we'll just go in and we'll do 60 by 40 instead of 40 by 60 and save. Now importing assets or photos to Roll20 is pretty easily. I've got a whole library of things that I've imported previously. But if you don't have those there, you can either upload or you can drag and drop from your Files Explorer. So this will be stage 3. Nice. No. All right, we'll do this way. We'll go here, and we'll go to Tomb of Annihilation and Maps, and we'll pull out the low, the medium, and the high, and we'll load all 3 of those. This is going well. They're all coming through as failing. There we go. Got 1, got 2. The initiative high is still giving us a problem. So we'll try that again one more time. If it doesn't work, I'll figure it off stream. We'll still work with this low and medium. There's still good resources we can use. There we go. All right, so I've got those 3 in my window here. The next step is to get them onto the map. They've got a lot of cool things in this jump gate. I don't like it entirely, but I do like a lot of the features, and I'm hoping that the good outweigh the bad. So we'll just keep moving forward on that. Switch to the map layer. Hey, do you want to change the size for the VTT? Now I don't love the subtlety of the suggestion. They want you to fit it to the page rather than adjust the page size. That's why they made this one the bold. It's cool. We'll just go ahead and do it. Looks like there's some extra space. Adjust the page size to match the image. No. Now we can tell that it's scrunched my map down, so we'll just drag, because we know our map is 40 by 60. So that's our first layer of the map. That's our high. So one of the things I want to do on this video is show how to do a multi-sided token for the map. So we're going to go ahead and drag out the mid. And we're going to drag out the high. Now I'm just layering these completely over each other for the time being. Probably don't have to. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go into our collection menu up at the top. We're going to go to these rollable tables and add a new rollable table. It's all the way at the bottom. Wow, I've got 14 to work with, but I know it's the last one, so we'll jump in here. And we're going to call this Trial of Initiative. I don't want my players to be able to roll on that table because that means they'll get to see all three sides of it, and that kind of spoils the fun. So we're going to add an item here, and we're going to drag. I probably should have done this instead of adding it to my library. We're going to drag that over here. It takes a second to load. I try not to change the title while it's loading because sometimes it makes it disconnect and fail. So while that loads, we wait. An inordinate amount of time. Let's try it this way. Low. No, I don't think it's because I have large file size, but it is possible that I'm getting close to the maximum file size here. So I might have to compress my images to be smaller. Low. We'll see what happens if we go back in. Try it again. Low. Nothing happens. Well, good content. Fantastic. There we go. So that's our first one. We'll just repeat that process. Add medium. Drag from another window. And add high. Now, because these are rollable tables, the way that these work for other things, that you can tell I have one of my preliminary workings of this, the lingering injury was working this way, but they have other things like Fang has a rollable token and Xanthar has a rollable token with multiple sides. The book has multiple sides to Iku, to multiple characters. The Incubus have multiple sides. So the way that these tables work normally, you can choose between one or the other, or you can roll randomly. Some of them that have multiple, like 6 of these. Well, if you have a black skull, you roll randomly, so your players would click this roll button, and it would give them one of these randomly. If you want one to be weighted more heavily, where it shows up more often, that's what you use this weight column for. So this is now 2 times more likely than the base 1 to be rolled. If you want it to be 4 times more likely, or even 10 times more likely, you can do that as well. So it's taken a while to load that one. We're going to try it again because I worked with the low. Cool. Close that. There we go. Now that we've got all 3, we are going to save changes, go back into our collection, and click token. Now it's going to drop 1 token on our page. It's going to be this itty bitty tiny token. We're going to drag it out to be the right size. And then we have a new option for when we click this token. We can right click it and click multi-sided and choose a side. So now when the players arrive on the field, it can be this low water, where there's some hints, some evidence of there being water on the field, but not quite enough. As we roll the rain higher, we can slowly add some water to the field. Now you notice this is coming through in a super low quality. I'm probably going to have to do this again and have that upload better, because that's not going to really be that easy to... Oh, there we go. It just took a second to load. So that'll be our medium, and then we have our option to go to high. and it's going to take a second to load here. I wonder if it's going to do that every time. If it is, it's kind of a pain, but we'll make do. Like I said, I may want to go back and compress those images and make them a little bit smaller, a little bit lower quality. So obviously, as the players are exploring the map, we can give them hints like, hey, the rain is coming. You see faster flowing water coming through. You know, your feet are getting wet. The sloshing. We'll start to describe the sloshing of water as they run through the map. But for the moment, we're going to go back to the low area. And it is, every time we change, it's going to give us a blurry map. That's just yucky. All right. So what we're missing here is any amount of foliage. Although these are low plains, we do want a little bit of foliage. So our map, to help the characters understand the difference here, we colored this area a little bit darker with a little bit of water to let them know, like, hey, that's the low part. And this part here experiences less rain because it's dry. So those of you who don't know, I live in Florida. I live in South Florida. The Everglades are on average a difference of like 3 inches in elevation. But every inch has an extremely different biome just because of the amount of air and soil and water that the plants can sustain, or that can sustain the plants. Therefore, very different plants grow. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to match the 3 areas to, I'm not going to say typical because I'm not a botanist, but we're going to try to stick with some typical plants that would be in those areas. So I have a few assets that I use in my games, in my marketplace purchases. I'm not sponsored by any of these people, but I've bought a lot of them over the years. And the ones that I'm looking for today are my jungle ones. So I do have saves versus caves. I think this is Gabriel Picard. He's got, I love his sets. They're very easy to use. They're very intuitive. You can just drop these onto your maps. They're a little bit hard to string together. Just for me personally, I have a hard time doing it. You're meant to be able to. But in his saves versus caves, he's got a lot of these cool jungle plants. Now, if I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, okay, this is a fern. These are probably also, all of these are probably ferns. As we get here, we get a little bit less into the bristly fern, a little bit more into okay, that's a true woody plant. I can pass some of these off for trees, but I don't think the lowlands, the floodplains, would really sustain most of these plants. Maybe the ferns in like our middle ground here, but I'm going to use some of these. We're also going to use not Santa's Workshop. So if we go to Quick Encounters in Swamps, I have a barren tree. It's pretty common. I've got cattails. I could use these cattails in the lowlands. That'll be pretty good. You can tell, I mean, I'm not going to use this map, but we'll see if this artist had the same idea as me. They put a little bit of like the dead trees in the water here. Those would be like the petrified wooden trees you see. They've got some detritus, like a dead log. And they got cattails around the borders here. So we can always open up somebody else's existing map and look at it for ideas. And then they have the woody trees up here on the highlands. These are the parts that probably never get any rain. Probably never get flooded fully. So we're going to get rid of that map. I've got marsh hummocks. Again, pardon my pronunciation. I'm a hillbilly pretending to be educated. Cool. So as we go through here, cattails, nothing in the parts that are fully swamped and fully flooded. And then again, they just go pretty much cattails, woody trees, detritus. So we'll try to run with some of that because, you know, they were successful, so we'll keep it with them. We do have lily pads. Those are pretty good for depicting standing water. But in a floodplains like this, we wouldn't get lily pads. So I try to think of it from not like I want to be accurate way, but I want to convey the right thing. I want to help my players not have to ask as many questions. I welcome questions always, but I don't want to force them to ask questions. I'd much rather them be able to look at it and intuit it, because that kind of gives them the feeling that their character understands what the world is beyond just what does my character think about this. Those questions, I readily entertain them. But as a player, it takes me out of the situation if I have to ask a question. So often I just pretend I know the answer and I wait till the DM corrects me. So I try not to put that burden on my players. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put these onto the foreground. And the way the foreground works, I'm going to show you a different map that we used previously. So this is the map that we used when our players were fighting Skybone, the dinosaur that got out during the trial of intuition, trial of insight. What is it called? Nice. Well, I'm not gonna remember that. Trial of instinct. Trial of instinct. Okay, so this is what our players were on here, and so all of these buildings, these awnings, are attached to the foreground layer. What that means is I can set a certain behavior on them so that as the character, we're going to view this as Sage. Now there's no dynamic lighting on this map, but we'll turn that on. We'll make it daylight because it's bright out. So all this does is it makes to where she can't see through the walls. But as we walk Sage over here, notice when she crosses the boundary of this awning, she can see under it. She can't see under it till she gets there. This kind of lets Sage know, hey, you're playing under the awning without that old effect of having to like be standing on top of the awning or be covered by the awning. And we don't want either one of those. We want her to feel like the environment is interactable. So when she walks up to the building, she can see under the building. She can now see the entrance. And, you know, if I wanted to, I could occlude the walls to where she can't see in the building. But we weren't going for that in this combat. We were just kind of getting a sane setting. The cool thing is if Sage goes under that awning, when we go to Parn can see Sage under the awning, so he can see where she is, and he can tell that there's a building over her. So we kind of get the better understanding here that, hey, your character is interacting with the world, is able to move throughout the world without having to like, okay, I'm going to take this item here and drop it onto the map layer and have you step on it, and then you're wondering, am I standing on top of this tent? So our objective is to try to create some of that effect on this map too. So coming back here, we're going to lay some cattails down. Now the cattails should be sparse because this plane, while it floods, it doesn't flood all the time. So we're going to add some of these cattails here. We'll zoom in a little bit. Now some of these vendors or artists have recommendations for sizes on cattails, like their stamps. So the lily pad's thick. Look, this one comes out as 2x2. Some of them recommend 2x2, and I don't know if it's just a compatibility issue or if it's just the way that they set it up in the store, but they don't always come out as planned. So it says 3x3, but sometimes you get a 1x1 3x3, and you have to know to drag it out. I will say I don't get that as often. I really think his name is Gabriel Picard. I could look it up, but that would be Gabriel Picard. I believe that's his name. Shout out. I like your maps, dude. Okay, so we're going to add some cattails. Now, the way that water flows, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, but it's going to hit this part fastest, and then it's going to come across, and it's going to hit this part after here. So there's the elasticity of the water is going to come around this corner, and it wants to wander because it's a low. That's why it's a wandering river. They go back and forth at lowlands because it doesn't have so much forward momentum. Eventually, this area will wander so far over here, and this will eventually get so exaggerated that these parts will actually form a small little lake, and the river will just connect in the middle. So there's lots of cool videos on that. I highly recommend. Just like even briefly looking into different things like the natural sciences, if you're interested in D&D or DMing. You don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be an expert at any of it, but it is rewarding to at least understand a little bit more about what's going on, so you can feel like you are just making informed decisions. Also, it's just super interesting for me. So here, where this water would be a little bit, we'll put it over here in these reeds. I like to not duplicate the same stamp if I don't have to. So I'm going to go through and look for, even though these are cattails large, I wonder if they look the same as the small cattail, and they don't. So I can always use bigger stamps in smaller areas. Now, by default, the map wants me to snap to an interval, but if I hold the Alt button, ALT button, I can place these in my own position between grids. So I don't like to have these clearly defined lay gaps between my stamps, just personal preference. I like it to look like one giant bundle, so we're gonna do that. And on this side, we're gonna give it a thinning out and leave it over there. Now it's not perfect, but we're just going to help them understand that this part is lower than this part. So we're gonna go through, I'm not gonna talk, and we're just gonna place some cattails here. Alright, so important thing I forgot, lock your map layer, lock your background so you don't move it. So we're going to lock that placement here. I right click, hit lock placement, and now when I'm trying to move these things, I don't accidentally spin my map and give myself a mild hernia. Cool. Lessons learned through pain that I hope you don't have to learn. Similar to when we're making the map in our map making program. For instance, I used incarnate. Subtlety is key here. Using too much can sometimes detract away from the map. So we're not trying to build a masterpiece. We're just trying to set the tone so they can understand what's going on. So I'm going to do things as subtly as I can without getting too involved. I don't want to cover every inch of the map. I'm just giving the hint of things. For instance, up here, maybe I want to give them the idea that this floods often, but not always. So I'm going to put some cattails up here, and that should be kind of indicative of oh, all these other cattails are where there are lots of water, but this one doesn't have any water up there. So again, we're just trying to give them we're giving their characters a reason to believe something different. Hey, maybe you're in the world enough that you can perceive and just intuit that this part does flood. That's our goal. We're not trying to make it realistic. We're just trying to make it believable or communicative enough for them. So I've almost gotten all the cattails I want to add. I'm relying on one stamp pretty heavily right now, but I don't have to. I could go through and use many different stamps. I prefer to work with one so that I don't over or under saturate the map with that. So cattails, in my experience, don't grow in the middle of, like they always have to have something. They're reedy. They have to grow on something or next to something. So I tend not to add them. I was thinking about adding them right here, but I'm just not going to because that's pretty deep and it's going to be flooded pretty soon. So I'd rather add them to this hillside. The large one works better if I have a concave space like this. These convex spaces, the small ones work better just because the contour of the map fits it better. So and again, we're not going for perfection. We're just going to, as Bob Ross would probably say, it's the implication of something. I might be thinking of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You know, it's easy to get this confused. Okay, so we're gonna look a little bit more at this. I'm pretty happy with that. So we move up to the next stage. Now, the one caveat that you want to make sure you're not doing anything that you're like gonna paint yourself into a corner. When I change the slides, my plants are going to stay. Now that's kind of cool because like I can see my plants through it. But if you wanted to add, for instance, if you added a small rock. So let's go and add a small rock. Yeah, if I add this small rock right here and I say like that's a rock, but it's only like a 1 foot tall rock, and then I want to simulate the water rising by 2 feet. That rock is still going to be there, so you're going to have to go back in and punch the rock out. I don't like to do that. I think it's kind of cumbersome. So instead, I like to position my things in a way that once the water rises, it's believable this log is still wedged here. So I'm either going to put it stuck between these two things, and I would want it to go back behind those reeds. So we'll drop it to the back. Whoops, we dropped it to behind our map. So like that behind the reeds. Now the reeds are just slightly over top of it. Or I would want to wedge it between these two rocks to where it looks like the flow of the water, since the water is going to the bottom right of this map, the flow of the water would be jamming the log against this. This could be useful for the players if I'm thinking about their way they might use this map, or how I'm imagining they could use this map. For instance, if we had Slink of Many Tails, he doesn't have a character sheet yet. Good job, or a token. If I gave him, if he wanted to run across here, this would reduce the gap to a 5 foot jump or a 10 foot jump, depending on how we're measuring, to here, and then across a log, and then across. As opposed to if I moved it to the other location, he would have to jump from the land to the rock, then run across. Either one's really capable. We're just, think about the way that it's going to impact the play before we lay it fully. So anyway, Slink isn't there. I just want to go through and grab a character sheet from my players. So cool. Let's keep adding stuff. So now I'm going to go back to my low map, and then we'll work our way up to the high maps and make sure everything is copacetic before we keep going. So the lack of cattails here would imply that this possibly has a faster flow and therefore can't sustain rooted vegetation. Same thing, so maybe this is floods more frequently. So we're left with a few, subtleties here. We're just trying to help our characters infer. Now, truthfully, I will let my characters infer anything they want about the map, and then I will just run with it. I'm a very big yes and DM, where if they're going to be bold enough to ask a question, I like to reward that, and I like to foster that, like, your intuition about the scene is good enough. Please make more, because I do. I don't want them to feel like they're, isekai'd into the world. I don't want them to feel like they were dropped in. They have no idea what's going on. I would like them to feel like their character knows things about the world because they've been in it for longer than just the adventure. So I'm going to go ahead and add some ferns to this second level here. I added this tree and I forgot to mention it, so we'll come back to it later. Cool. So we're going to add some ferns. I'm going to stick with the swamp stuff for now. We went through all of those. We've got our save first caves. We're going to add some of these ferns. See, like this one, 4x4. It's supposed to be a little bit bigger. This could almost be a tree, so what I'll probably do here is treat it like a tree. Instead of it being on the map layer, I'll put it to the foreground layer. Now, on the foreground layer, notice that it stands out. I need to apply some different changes to it. So reactions, I want it to have a conditional fade. This means when another token overlaps with it, it goes away. How much away? Well, it's going to go to 30% opacity. So let's look at that in practice. We're just going to grab this random wolf I have, and we're going to put it on the token layer. So as if wolf comes across, nothing happens because we're not looking like the wolf. Brilliant. I made a fool. Let's try it like this. Let's go to Fang. And as Fang comes across, it fades. Now green on green is a little bit hard to see, so I might actually turn that opacity up from 30 to somewhere around like 50 or 55. Just so that we can still see it. Now it's a little bit easier to see, but I can still see Fang, and Fang is still visible underneath it. So again, that's the objective, is to give them, hey, there's a tree here, you can use it as a tree. I know that it says fern, but truly it's not going to look like a fern, it's going to look like a tree. It's not what we intended it to be, it's what they receive it to be, what they perceive. So let's go through and add some more stuff. Go on mute a second. I will say the experience of placing different plants like this in Incarnate is better. I can select a group of stamps and place them, so I don't have to go through and pick out each individual fern that I am placing. I can just click the button that says fern, and as I have multiple ferns in that stamp set, it will randomly select one or two of them for me, or 6 or 7 or 9 or 10 or however many of them that there are in the collection, and it'll cycle through them. This makes for much more believable placement, whereas if I grabbed this one and was like, all right, I need to fill this area with ferns, well, there's a pattern pattern recognition that's going to happen as soon as you're like, okay, ... Yeah, that's kind of crappy. I don't like that. I will say it's better on Incarnate for that. The problem with that is that Incarnate, I cannot export the stamps solo. They're going to come through every time, which is a bummer. So I don't want that. So we're going to go to the, oh man, what have I placed on here? All of these I want to be on the map layer. map. There we go. And we're going to go to the map layer. We're going to move this guy up so we can see where the water is and where the vegetation would grow for this second round of plants here. Now I want to be careful that I don't go over, because these, like the cattails, it makes sense. They're very tall, reedy things, and I might go through on the day of and delete them when we move to the top flood. I'm not sure. That's kind of like a game time decision there, but I want to make sure that as I go up farther, I don't choose these ferns and place them where they could accidentally be flooded, because they're not going to show through. They're pretty short. So all of these cattails would likely not make it onto this map. This tree would probably still be there because it's very sturdy, and it's not going to be flooded forever. But it might make more sense to drag this tree and put it on the border here, so that it does have a slightly higher elevation. These things, if they can go under, we can see that they are still on an elevation. The log would have flown away by that point. The cattails would go away. So we'll have some dynamic. We'll have some stamps that we have to delete because we've chosen to be a little bit more detailed here. But we're going to go through and add some more jungle tufts. A lot of these stamps do have a directionality to them, so while it's great if you want to flip them upside down, the problem is it doesn't look very natural. The shadows are on the wrong side when comparing it to this one. They're meant to be looked at this way. Now, your players might not notice that. It bothers me, so I try not to do it, because again, I don't want to put something on the map that's going to be a problem for their imagination. It's really hard to jump out, really hard to stay in anyways. You know, you have a lot of players who are sending memes in the chat. People are talking about jokes. There's just, you know, D&D is meant to be fun and social, so that the tendency is to jump out of the immersion into the social. I try to jar as seldomly as I have to for that, so I try to not to make like things that are already prone to do that. Try to minimize it. I don't want those two trees to look identical, but I don't want to mess up my stamp shadowing, so we'll do that one like that. A little bit bigger. Now, part of this challenge is going to be having the characters choose a campsite. So one of the reasons I'm having the map have different layers of height is they should hopefully pick a camp location that is elevated. That is part of the challenge of going forward in this game, is that they'll need to pick places that are advantageous or defensible or things like that. So we've got one more high elevation over here. If I run out of trees, I may just turn some ferns into trees. I've seen some pretty tall palm fan ferns down here, or palms. So we're going to add that reaction, conditional fade, up to 55, and change that to the foreground. Another high area right here. Now it looks dry, but that's just because it's not covered in water half the time. So we're gonna let that slide. Uh-oh, I gotta write to them and let them know that jungled uft is a misspelling. All right, let's add. I did it again. I've gone back to the token layer and I started dragging all of these when they're supposed to be on the map layer. Cool. Thank goodness for Control Z. Let's send it back so we don't lose all of that. Let's go back and evaluate this level. So this level, we would need, I'm just not seeing the small plants that I want for this level, which is why I kind of stepped past it. What I may end up doing is locking all the other plants. I'll show you what I mean. And then when the time comes to delete the plants from this level, I will delete them all in a big group. That way I won't have to go through and delete them one by one. Or I may just group them together and add them to the GM layer. We'll try that, and if it doesn't work on Sunday, we'll say we tried. So stick with me, y'all. Those are too big. Running out of tokens that I haven't used yet. Have some more broadleafs. This is going to be very marshy up here, so what we may do is add some of those swamp lily pads, sparse lily pads up here, and just so that this looks like it has some standing water. Now they may not come across as lily pads on the day of, they may come across as something else, but the point is we're just looking to signify this as a different terrain than the ones that are around it. So just enough. I'm going to try to give this this whole area here nice. So the objective is to look slightly different, and I think we did that. We could go with some thick lily pads on the water groups. The problem with the thick lily pads is they're kind of occluding my water, my standing water up there. I don't think I want to go with that, so I'm gonna opt for not using those. Not because I think it's bad. If you wanted to do it in your game, go right ahead. In my game, I think I'm gonna leave that a little bit less. We're gonna have this thing up here because I want this to be like a hey, go here type of. I want them to succeed, so we're gonna have that be a really big high ground to let them know that it is such. This is designated as a bush, but if we make it tall enough, it can also be a tree. So we're gonna add that. Reactions conditional 55 and 55. So. And then change layer, and then foreground. So this is what it's going to go like most of the time. I think by Sunday I will have done a bunch more of this. So the next time we see this map together, it will look very different. But that's essentially the same. So we're going to look at that real quick in recap. You create a new table. You can upload here. That map layer, that token, you click token, and it spits out a token. Itty bitty. You drag that up as big as you want it to be. From there, multi-sided, you can either have them roll randomly to have the rain, hey, what level is the rain at? Well, the rain's a medium. Or you can just choose your layer by doing the slider. This also works for werewolves, this works for lycanthropes, this works for doppelgangers and other things that may change the token on the regular. Apparently we've dropped Fang onto the map layer. Okay, from there, we try to make sure that we don't leave anything in between. What I was talking about doing, anybody on this layer here. So these ones, we're going to try to get all of those into one. Let's do this. Let's put this guy somewhere else. Change layer, GM for just a moment. We're going to go through and drag all of these ones that are in this intermediary area. This one and this one, these ones, this one, because he's small. Those are fine. I kind of left the east side of the map barren, didn't I? I'll get that before next week. All of those. So we're going to group these together. I've got group. And then on the day of, I'll just drop them onto the GM layer. That way, when we're looking at our map, which will now go back to the map layer, we'll turn our GM layer completely off. Whoops, like this. So when we take our map up, I said up, those are gone. And then when we take our map to anywhere beneath there, choose side down, I'll just go to the GM layer, grab those, and put them back to the map layer. And there they are. So it'll be nice and quick. I'll probably do that. Let's leave this map on the low side, and then we'll see it next time we see it. We'll see it together on Sunday. So again, this is just trying to pull back the sheets a little bit on what we do in prep. I'll probably try to get some more going in there in terms of the different encounters we're going to have on this map. If I get a good chance to record that, I'll pop it out there. Otherwise, leave a comment. Ask questions if you have them, or let me know what else you want to see in our campaign that we use on the regular, and we'll try to show you how